Hi, this is Miss Linton, and this is 7th period support, and these are my wonderful honors bio students. Say hello.
Hello.
All right, thank you. So this is your first quiz you've ever had. Quiz questions will usually run from 5 to 7 questions. We will do them on HelloSmart, okay? And you will respond just like we do in class, just like we have been doing in class. And then once we're done with the quiz, then we'll discuss all the answers and go over it. What are the for sure's? The for sure's are going to be the content that we discussed in class, and I'll be reviewing quite a bit of that with you now. Another for sure is remember your additional objectives, which, like, if you're thinking back to your freshman year, this would be like highly suggested homework. Remember that? And I recommended that you maybe copy that because it's in a Google Doc. It's at the bottom of your calendar, right? If you go onto your calendar and you look at the bottom of that, you can copy the additional objectives for this chapter, and then you could type up your responses to them so you're ready to go on that. Remember, if somebody else does it for you, you have not learned it. Okay, you've turned it into busy work. You all need to learn it. You can check each other's answers, but make sure that everybody participates in that. Okay, I'm not going to re-lecture the whole chapter, but what I will do is hit all the big ticket items. Be ready to ask me questions. If you don't understand something, throw that hand up there and let me answer that question for you. And we'll try to do all the embedded questions and see if you can get 100% on them as we go through them the second time. Okay? Any questions you want to ask me before I start? Yes?
On the additional objectives at the bottom of the calendar, there's something about like an article. It's like quotes from an article. Do you want us to read
Here.
that?
Oh, you mean the sustainability one?
I think so.
Yeah, I haven't got to that yet.
Okay.
That's more towards the, I'm going to hit that, but
Okay.
you don't have an assignment yet on that. You will, but
Okay.
Good question. Anything else you want to ask me? Okay, so let's stop. So when you look at the title of this chapter, Population Growth and Regulation, think of things you know, just big ticket items, and maybe type them up on your review notes that you're doing right now. Population growth. How do we measure the growth of populations? What are all the things we take into consideration when we think about how a population? Just brainstorm on that right now. See what your brain comes up with. What are some of the things we look at? And by the way, my smartboard is being naughty, and it acts like an eraser when it should be a pen, or it's not writing at all. So it'll be a mystery what happens today, and we'll just do our best. Why it's doing that, I cannot tell you. You got some things? What are things about population growth we've already talked about? What was the first thing we looked? Yes?
The birth and the death rate.
Okay, the birth rate and the death rate. So we were measuring population. Do you remember how we did R equals what? Births minus what? Deaths over total population. Exactly. And then we could measure that growth rate using two curves. What were the two curves?
Exponential.
J and S, right? So we had two growth curves that we looked at. We looked at an exponential, which we called J, and then we looked at another one. What was that one called? S, and what was that one called? Logistic. Okay, good. I'll go into more of that. I'm just trying to see what you remember. What's another thing we learned about population growth? Another survivorship curves. Remember, we always started how many? 1,000. Good. Do you remember that there were 3 lines to that survivorship curve, right?
Yes.
Okay. What curve was this one called? Number 1. Who's a 1? Humans. Large mammals are 1, right? And then down here we had a 3. Who are 3s?
Frogs.
Insects, small things, right? Okay. And then birds were probably somewhere here too. And there's all different levels of that. But those were survivorship curves. What else did we talk about populations? Do you remember when we, yes?
Opportunistic growth.
Yes, we put all of this together when we talked about opportunistic, the opportunistic pattern versus the equilibrium pattern. Do you remember that? Opportunistic was R max, J-shaped growth curves, probably type 3 survivorship curve. They tend to be small, a lot of young, don't care for them, right? Bless you. And then the opposite of that, if you weren't the opportunistic, what were you? Equilibrium. And you were more like the S curve. You were large. You had few young. You cared for them. Probably type 1 survivorship curve. Good. I'm looking for something else. It was like this or like this. You remember what those are? Age structure diagrams, right? So on age structure diagrams, these are all things about populations, right? Age structure diagrams, we said this was probably a what? A LDC, less developed country, and this was a MDC. And we said you could go from there to there, right? If you have proper medicine, hygiene, food, you can care for your offspring without them, and you get a good what? Education, right? That helps them transition. What we know about this right here, remember it was 3, you could break it into 3, pre-reproductive, reproductive, and what? Post-reproductive. And if you are heavy in the pre-reproductive, then all of those large numbers are going to be moving into the reproductive, which makes you even heavier on the baby end, right? Okay, so those populations are growing. When you get the more standard, straight, kind of more like a column, then the amount that are dying are about the same as the amount that are born, right? And that's a more age structure diagram, the more stable age structure diagram. Okay, so those were populations. Then look at the second part, population growth. What's the second part of this chapter about?
Regulation.
Yeah, how populations are regulated. And we talked about that way back here, right? We talked about when you look at an exponential growth curve, it's like saying there's no limitations. You have all the food in the world, yes? Okay. Now, what am I talking to you about right now? I'm talking to you about big ticket items so you understand all the details and perspective with everything else. Do you understand that? Okay, I'm kind of painting the picture of this chapter. When we looked at the logistic growth curve right here, what kind of things slowed it down from the exponential, from the J-shaped into the S? What did we call those things? Environmental pressures. That restricted them, right? And that's what put them so that they stayed right about at their what? Carrying capacity, right? So when we looked at the two, there was the independent and the dependent. Independent what?
Density.
Independent. Density dependent and density independent variables. Density independent. It doesn't matter if there's 2 people in this room or there's 1,000 people in this room. It will have the same proportional results, right? It's not density dependent, it's density independent. What are some things that are density independent that can regulate a population size?
Flood.
Weather, flood, right? These things are what? Living or non-living? Abiotic, which means non-living. Good job. Density dependent variables are dependent on the density. As the numbers go up, you have more what? Competition with other members of your species. As the numbers go up, there could be more predation on you. As the numbers go up, you could get disease and spread that, right? As the numbers go up, then it might be that too. Might be harder, and you might have to travel farther to get a home. Might be harder to get a mate. Those are density-dependent variables that can regulate your growth. Okay? Then we transitioned to other regulating factors. What are other things like we talked about when you're in competition with, remember we said population and then what? Communities. So this is when 2 different species are competing with each other, yes? Okay? And so sometimes when they compete against each other, one's going to have to die and one will live, or they will have to do what? Resource partitioning. What was that called that dictated that? The principle. Competitive exclusion principle. It says one's going to live, one's going to die, or you're going to have to break it up. That resource partitioning. You got 6 monkeys, 6 different species of monkey living in one canopy. Do they want to spend a lot of time fighting each other? No, because then they don't have enough time to eat, sex, or sleep. Okay, so they want to reduce that competition. So what do they do to reduce that competition? I eat the old berries, you eat the new berries. I eat the new leaves, you eat the old leaves, right? You divide it up so there's less competition. If I tend to eat newer berries that are harder, haven't really ripened yet, my teeth better be what? Stronger. But if I'm eating old berries, is it as important anymore? No, because they're like melting in my mouth, right? Okay? So over time, I can accrue differences in my anatomy because I'm going for the big seeds versus the little seeds. Or I'm eating the insects that are in the tree with a twig. What is that called? Character displacement. Character displacement. My characters, so I am here, and yeah. If we look, let me get it for you. It's coming, it's coming. Look at all these things we already reviewed and learned. Here we go. Okay? So these finches all have different size beaks for the food that they're eating because that reduced that competition. That was character displacement. All right, now, another thing that can happen when you're in a what? Community, okay, is one person can be the predator and the other one can be the prey, right? And so what did we see amongst them? There was what? Cycling. So when the prey numbers went up, then what other number went up? Predator. And then as the predator numbers went up, it made the prey go down. Now why did the prey go down? They could have gone down because they were overeaten by the or maybe the prey didn't have enough food, and so their numbers went down, and therefore the predator numbers went down. So that's predator-prey cycling. Then we looked at different strategies like, well, I don't want to be eaten, so I better learn how to run really fast, okay? And because I'm learning how to run faster, not learning, that's bad. I'm selected for the ones that can run the fastest and the ones that are surviving and reproducing. Since I'm selected, then if I am the hare and there's a lynx that's chasing me, he should probably be really what? Fast too, because he wants to catch me. So we're pushing each other, and what is that called? Coevolution. Coevolution. Okay, then another thing that can happen besides predator and prey is I could just want to hide. I want to hide because I don't want him to find me. So that might be, what do you call that? Mimicry. Okay, because I could mimic a rock or something, or I'm trying to camouflage myself, right? So those are all things. We looked at like that caterpillar looks like he was part of the leaf, right? When you're trying to mimic that. Yes? Anti-predator defense is what I was after, yes. So if I'm a plant and I can't run away, how can I defend myself against an herbivore who wants to eat me? Well, if I'm a plant, you're going to see me. I could have thorns. What else could I have? Yeah, toxins, poisons. I could release a chemical that draws a predator of the guy who's eating me, right? Those are all different things you could do if you're a plant. Okay? If you are a tasty bug, but you don't want to be eaten, maybe you could mimic a distasteful bug. Now, I'm not really a distasteful bug, but I'm trying to look like one. What kind of mimicry is that called? Close. Batesian. Batesian. And the way I remember that is I'm trying to get you to take the bait. I'm a fly, I'm tasty, but I'm trying to look like a spider. You're not a spider. So I will try to mimic something that is distasteful, and hopefully you'll ignore me. If I am a wasp or a bee, okay, and I'm looking also like a hornet, that black and yellow, I'm trying to increase the learning curve. What's that called? Malaria. What if I don't try to hide at all? I don't try to look like a wasp or a bee. I am like a super bright color and you can see me everywhere. What would that probably indicate? I'm poisonous. I'm advertising. I want you to be clear that I am poisonous. I do not want you to mistake me for something that's not poisonous. And so I don't want you to even eat me. Okay? And then second to the last thing we talked about, and we'll hit some key pictures, need it. Two different species, if they're living and interacting with each other, it starts with an S. What is that called? Symbiosis. Now, in the ones I'm having you learn, it's always going to be good at least for one. So if it's good for me and it's good for you, what would that be called? Mutualistic. Because it's mutualistic. She likes it, I like it. Yay. Now, could she and I be in a symbiotic relationship? No. Why not? Same species. It has to be a different species. Okay? So give me an example of a mutualistic relationship.
Dog and human.
Dog and human. Good. Name another one. Yes. Clownfish and the sea anemone. Yes, exactly. Okay, if it's good for me and bad for the other species, then that would be what? Parasitism. Good. Name an example of parasitism. A leech, tapeworm, mites, strep throat, you got it. Ticks, exactly. If it's good for me and it doesn't help or hurt you, what would that be called? Commensalism. Speaking of that, I believe you have a POGL that's due, and I think I had it due by 9:30 tonight, right? If you didn't finish it yesterday in class, I think I gave you till 9:30 tonight. Do you need to do it?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last thing we talked about was ecological succession. And these are changes in the environment over time, oftentimes due to some disaster that takes place. If it is primary succession, you are starting on bare what? Rock. If it's secondary succession, you at least have what? Soil. What's going to get you to that climax community faster? With bare rock or soil? So secondary succession happens what? Faster. Happens faster. Okay, and then do you want to say, boy, I wish you just had no disasters at all. I just wish you had no hardship ever. No. Okay, because we know that a little bit of hardship, not too frequent, okay, it's called the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, says a little bit of hardship, not too often, will actually build a better community that's more diverse. Just like resiliency for you. If everybody does everything for you, you don't have your own strength in order to achieve those things, right? So a little bit of pushback gives you that resiliency. All right, I'm going to show you a few key pictures, and then we can go through and do some of the questions if you would like. Would you like?
Yes.
Okay, so do you remember this?
Yes.
Let's do this together. Individual, and then it's what? Like a population, one species, community, more than one species, bring in the environment, and then the biosphere, where everyone, yes? Yeah. Biosphere, where all living things exist. We already talked about this, yes? Births, deaths. Oh, we skipped this. Biotic potential. Maximum number of offspring you have, that's dependent upon 4 things. Oh, I'm a pin. Awesome. 4 things. When you first start having sex, which you should not be doing right now. Average number of offspring per reproduction when you do start. How many kids do you have? How often do you do that? And then what are the odds that they will survive until age of reproduction? Okay. When are you starting? How many do you have? How often do you do it? And will you live? That's the biotic potential. Okay. We looked at, here you can see both the J-shaped curve in blue, S-shaped, and carrying capacity is right along here. Survivorship curves, we have discussed that. So that should be a review. Zero population, number of births equals the number of what? Deaths. Age structure diagrams. You know the difference between them. We talked about opportunistic species and their characteristics versus the equilibrium pattern. We talked about both abiotic and biotic regulating factors. We said density independent is non-living, things like weather, whereas density dependent, you should probably turn off your phone if it keeps dinging, whereas density dependent factors are living things, things like competition and disease and predation. We talked about habitat versus niche. Habitat is where you what? Live, and niche is what you do. And we know that no two species can occupy the exact same niche. What is that called? Competitive exclusion principle. What will happen to one of them? One of them will either die or you'll figure out a way to do what? Resource partitioning. And we talked about character displacement. We talked about cycling, predator-prey cycling, and coevolution. Defensive mechanisms like hiding, camouflage. Batesian versus Mullerian mimicry. The way I remember Mullerian is we both have stingers, 2 L's, Mullerian, Batesian, I get you to take the bait. We talked about symbiotic relationships. These do not look so good. Okay. Epiphytes are a really good example of commensalism where it doesn't hurt. We talked about mutualism and different examples of that, and cleaning relationships. And then we talked about ecological succession. Okay, and then you're gonna, and we talked about chance having a lot to do with what colonizes. Now, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna allow you to try doing the practice question, see if you can get 100%. But before I do that, is there anybody who has questions that don't forget your additional objectives, questions you need me to go over? Things you didn't understand. Okay, get a device. I don't care if you use your Chromebook or your phone. Go out that door. Let's try to get 100% on all of these. Okay, go out that door and let's go in as our favorite dog. If we got a dog, if we got to go pick out a puppy tomorrow, even if we are cat people or other pet people or no pet people.
What about a cat-dog hybrid?
No, it's got to be a dog. Got to go in as dog. It's got to be a dog.
No, Aaron, you can't.
Okay, hurry up so we can do some of these. I am going to pause you just for a moment. So at home, you could be answering these questions. See how the students are answering them? You can answer them too. Take a moment, write it down on a piece of paper. Smarty McSmarties. Okay, everybody's done with 1, everybody's done with 2. So let's check out the answer. Which term refers to a group that consists of only one type of species? Population. Why doesn't community, guys, I want to try to get through all of these. Why doesn't community work? More than one. Why doesn't organism work? It's only one. And it says group. That would be the key word there. Oh, all the species in one area and the environment is an ecosystem. Biosphere is just where all living things exist. This is a very specific term, okay, for ecosystems, so you want to know that. And somebody said community, it doesn't include the environment. Darn it. Okay, try this one. This is based on this right here. And the goal is not to try to just remember the question, the answer to the question, but to actually do that question. It's going to show the answer if I show. Because it's a typing answer. Okay, so let's talk about this. People are still, it's trying to end it. In a population of 50 geese, there are 18 births and 7 deaths. So you would say 18 minus 7. What is 18 minus 7? 11. Over the total population of 50. So 11 divided by 50 is 0.22. Okay, so if you put 0.22 or 0.22, you got it right. This one is wrong, because that is, when you have a percent after that, then it's, no. And then this doesn't have the decimal, and then I just told you not to do it in percentage, to do it in decimal. Okay, let's do another one. Here you go. And this one is no. Trying these at home, remember. All right, I think maybe somebody walked out, so let's go ahead and check. Oh, okay, if R is equal to a negative number, what does that tell you about the population? It's going down. Yeah. So death rate must be higher than the birth rate, not the birth rate higher, not the other way around. Number 2, most of you got that? Which of the following statements about plant species is not relevant for determining its biotic potential? Remember, if it produces its first flowers at 5 years of age, flowers are the special places for plants, okay? And so that is telling you when they're first starting to reproduce. If it reproduces annually, it tells you how often. 50% of the seedlings grow into mature plants. That's telling you its survivability. On average, 100 seedlings are produced by each plant every year. That is telling you how many offspring they have. So the only thing that doesn't fit into biotic potential is it produces 10 kilograms of mass per year. Tell your bio buddy how you did on those, and then I'll turn on another one.
You do. I took a 50%. Better than my math.
Okay, here you go. Good job. Everybody that's here got it. Were there any questions? Lucky or good? Lucky or good? Good? All right. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. You guys, when you're done today, if you wouldn't mind putting the chairs down for me for back to school night, if it's your lab station or a friend's lab station, that would be super helpful. making sure there's no trash on the floor so it's nice. Thank you, sweetheart. I think we're done. Let's see. Oh! Uh-oh. Let's talk about this. Okay, guys, let me explain this. If there are more people in the pre-reproductive stage of life than in the reproductive, what shape are we in? A pyramid or a column? Pyramid. It's got to be a pyramid. Then the replacement reproduction will result in an increase in the population size because all of those are going to have more babies. Yes? All those pre-reproductive are going to move into reproductive and have more babies, even more offspring. All right, let's go again. Try right here. Four questions. Did you need me for something?
I'm going to ask a question.
What kind of question is it?
About science.
Okay, ask me. Well, go ahead. They're working on these four questions. You're just going to be recorded because these people are working through these questions. Quickly.
Okay, well, we were just looking at like the essay points for the test on Friday.
Oh.
And the three
Okay.
and four don't make any sense.
Well, I went over all the ones in the essay review, which I had a couple days ago, and I posted it on YouTube, so I would watch it because I went over everything.
And also for the third one, do we need to know about what's it called? Transport.
No, we haven't talked about those yet. If you're looking at the old PDFs, if you're looking at,
So we only.
We know we're not ready.
you not ready? 2, 3, 4. Oh.
Get random ones. If we get them wrong.
Okay, some more of you still have this fourth question, I think. All right, here we go. Okay, biotic means what? Living. Okay, pH of water, that's a measurement of the hydrogen ions of the water. That's not alive. Weather patterns are not alive. Shelter is not alive. Now, are there exceptions to shelter? Sure. If you're a parasite, probably your shelter is a living thing. But this is not looking at the exceptions, it's looking at the norm. All of the rest of these are living. Number 2, density independent. The only thing that's density independent on here is weather. Everything else are density dependent factors. You're going to have more competition as your population gets larger. You're going to have more predation as your population gets larger. Your size of your population is going to get larger as your population gets larger. Resource availability is going to go down as your population gets larger. Weather is not going to be a factor of that. Okay, number 4. Okay, which of the following is not a feature of an organism with an opportunistic? Now, in your mind, when you get a question like that, first of all, you need to pay attention to the capitalized word which says not. And then you need to think about opportunistic. Opportunistic, are you big or small? Small. A lot of offspring or a few? Do you care for your young? J or S-shaped growth curve? J. Survivorship curve? 3. Okay. Density dependent or density independent variables regulate you probably? Independent. Good. So all of these things must be a feature of the equilibrium pattern, except for one, right? All of these are equilibrium except for one, because which of the following is not a feature of an organism with an opportunistic life history pattern? So opportunistic life history patterns, they tend to have what? Small number of offspring? No? Large. Yeah, large. Okay, number 4, an S-shaped growth curve still has exponential. Okay, and it definitely happens when there is environmental resistance. An S-shaped growth curve occurs if survivorship is short-lived. Is that true? No. Okay, so it includes an exponential growth phase. All right, let's see if we have a few more in here. Here's one. Got a lot of questions in here. I think we talked about this in our review too. Okay, just 4 of you struggled on that. What says they can't occupy the same ecological niche? Competitive exclusion principle. Do they want to spend time fighting? No. They want to eat, have sex, and sleep. Okay, they do not want to fight. We went over that multiple times today. You are worrying me. All right. I think there's one more after this, which I'm happy to do if you would like to have it. Pardon? No, what did I just say, sweetheart? I said there's one more after this. Guys, I don't mind if you go because the bell's ringing. You can always go, but just don't talk so we can continue on, okay? Okay, good. Most of you got that. It was bad for one. It's bad for the, oh wait, sorry, I'm thinking about another question. It's good for the flowering plant because he gets fertilized, and it's good for the insect because they get nectar. On this one, it's bad for the insect who's getting eggs laid into their head, okay? So that would be bad for them, good for the small wasp. All right, and the last one, here you go. Anytime now, bringing it home, closing it out. Here we go. Moss on rock. So you got to think, what kind of succession is this? The moss is on the rock. On the rock. On the rock. That would be primary. All right. Don't forget your additional objectives. Make good choices. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye. It's in it. It's doing photosynthesis. So it's not getting it from the rock. The rock's just a location for it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Have a good evening. Make good choices. Don't go to bed too late.